back with part 5 of this week's reading of the Messianic Jewish Family Bible Tree of Life version, TLV. And we are going to finish out chapter 10. Assyria advancing. He has come to Elath and passed through Migron. At Michmaz he deposited his supplies. They have crossed over the pass. They have taken up lodging at Geba. Ramah is terrified. Gibeah. Shaul has fled. Shriek, your cry, daughter of Gelim. Listen, O Laish, O poor Anathoth. Medmenah has fled. The inhabitants of Gebim take cover. This very day he will halt at Nob. He shakes his fist at the mountain of the daughter of Zion, the hill of Jerusalem. Behold, the Lord Adonai Sabaoth will lop off the branches with terror. So the tall ones will be cut down, and the lofty ones laid low. Yes, he will hack down the thickets of the forest with iron, and Lebanon with its majesty will fall. And that's the end of chapter 10. Romans 9 is 9 verse 27 is a footnote. Isaiah cries out concerning Israel, though the number of Bani Israel be as the sand of the sea, only a remnant shall be saved. For Adonai will carry out his word upon the earth, bringing it to an end and finishing quickly. Chapter 11, the branch from David. Then a shoot will come forth out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch will bear fruit out of his roots. The Messianic prediction. Yeshua is born of the tribe of Judah. Jesse and David were of that tribe. The Ruach of Adonai will rest upon him, the spirit of wisdom and insight, the spirit of counsel and might, the spirit of knowledge and of the fear of Adonai. His delight will be in the fear of Adonai. He will not judge by what his eyes see, nor decide by what his ears see, but with righteousness he will judge the poor, and decide with fairness for the poor of the land. He will strike the land with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips. He will slay the wicked. Also, righteousness will be the belt around his loins, and faithfulness the belt around his waist. And this is all Messiah. The Messianic age of Shalom. And this is the millennial reign. The wolf will dwell with the lamb. The leopard will lie down with the kid, the calf and the young lion, and the yearling together, and a little child will lead them. The cow and the bear will graze, their young ones lie down together, and the lion will eat straw like an ox. A nursing child will play by a cobra's hole, and a weaned child will put his hand into a viper's den. They will not hurt or destroy in all my holy mountain, for the earth will be full of the knowledge of Adonai as the waters cover the sea. So I'm going to pause this for just a second. Matthew 3:16 is talking about Yeshua. After being immersed, Yeshua rose up out of the water, and behold, the heavens were opened to him, and he saw the Ruach Elohim descending like a dove and coming upon him. And behold, a voice from the heavens said, This is my son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased. So we're looking back on this, in chapter 11, the branch from David, the Ruach of Adonai will rest upon him, the spirit of wisdom and insight, the spirit of counsel and might, the spirit of knowledge, and of the fear of Adonai. And Romans chapter 15:12 says, and again Isaiah says, there shall be a shoot of Jesse, and the one who arises to rule the Gentiles, to him shall the Gentiles hope. And there's another footnote of Revelation chapter 19:11. Then I saw heaven opened, and behold, a white horse. The one riding on it is called Faithful and True, and he judges and makes war in righteousness. And that same chapter, verse 15, from his mouth comes a sharp sword, so that with it he may strike down the nations, and he shall rule them with an iron rod, and he treads the winepress of the furious wrath of Elohai Sebaot. Okay. The last part of chapter 11 is second return from diaspora. It will also come about in that day that the root of Jesse will stand as a banner for the peoples. The nations will seek for him. So this is Yeshua's second coming. And his resting place will be glorious. It will also come about in that day that my Lord will again redeem a second time with his hand the remnant of his people who remain. From Assyria, from Egypt, from Pathros, from Cush, Elam, Shinar, Hamath, and from the islands of the sea, he will lift up a banner for the nations and assemble the dispersed of Israel and gather the scattered of Judah. From the four corners of the earth, Ephraim's envy will end. Those hostile to Judah will be cut off. Ephraim will not be jealous of Judah, and Judah will not harass Ephraim. They will swoop down on the Philistine slope to the west. Together they will plunder the children of the east, laying their hand on Edom and Moab, the children of Ammon obeying them. Then Adonai will dry up the gulf of the Egyptian sea. He will wave his hand over the river with his scorching wind, and will strike it into seven streams, and let men walk over in sandals. So there will be a highway for the remnant of his people who remain from Assyria, as there was for Israel in the day they came up out of the land of Egypt. So this is to come, and we can see that yes, there is Aliyah being made, and people are being returning to the land. So the other things will definitely that are prophesied will take place as well, and there will be a continuing return um, of the scattered in the times that we're living in now as well. Chapter 12, Wells of Salvation. In that day you will say, I will give you thanks, Adonai, for though you were angry with me, your anger is turned away, and you comfort me. Behold, God is my salvation. I will trust and will not be afraid, for the Lord Adonai is my strength and my song. He also has become my salvation, my Yeshua. With joy you will draw water from the wells of salvation, Yeshua. The word salvation means Yeshua. In that day you will say, give thanks to Adonai, proclaim his name, declare his works to the prophets, so they remember his exalted name. Sing to Adonai, for he has done gloriously. Let this be known in all the earth. Cry out and shout, inhabitant of Zion, for great in your midst is the Holy One of Israel. Now, yes, Yeshua's name means salvation. And there is a footnote, Matthew 24, verses 30 to 31. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and then all the tribes of the land will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. He will send out his angels with a great shofar, and they will gather together his chosen from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Chapter 13, End of Babylon and the World. The burden of Babylon, which Isaiah the son of Amos saw. Lift up a banner on a bare mountain, raise a voice to them, wave a hand, so that they may enter the gates of the nobles. I have commanded my consecrated ones, yes, I have called my mighty ones, my proud, exulting ones for my fury. A sound of tumult in the mountains, like that of many people, a sound of uproar of kingdoms, of nations gathered. Adonai Sabaoth is mustering the army for battle. They are coming from a far country, from the end of the heavens, Adonai and the weapons of his wrath to destroy the whole land. And here comes some last days prophecy. Wait, for the day of Adonai is near. It will come as destruction from Shaddai. Therefore all hands will fall limp, and every man's heart will melt. They will be terrified. Pain and anguish will take hold of them. They will writhe as a woman in labor. They will look aghast at one another, their faces aflame. Behold, the day of Adonai comes, cruel, full of wrath and fierce fury, to make the earth a desolation and destroy its sinners from it. For the stars of heaven and their constellations will not give their light. The rising sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. I will punish the world for evil, and the wicked for their iniquity. I will put an end to the arrogance of the pride, and abase the insolence of tyrants. I will make people scarcer than gold, and even than the pure gold of Ophir. Therefore I will make heaven tremble, and the earth will shake from its place at the wrath of Adonai Sabaoth in the day of his fierce fury. It will be like a hunted gazelle, or like sheep with no one gathering. Each will return to his own people, each will flee to his own country. Everyone found will be thrust through, everyone caught will fall by the sword. Their babes will be dashed in pieces before their eyes, their houses will be plundered, and their wives ravished. Behold, I will stir up against them the Medes, who will not value silver, and will take no delight in gold. Their bows will be cut their bows will cut down the young men with no pity on the fruit of the womb, nor will their eyes spare children. So Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of Chaldean pride, will be just as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. It will never be inhabited, nor will it be dwelt in from generation to generation. Nor will an Arab pitch a tent there, nor will shepherds let flocks lie there, but desert creatures will lie there. Their houses will be full of owls, ostriches will dwell there, and goat demons will dance there. Hyenas will howl in their citadels, and jackals in their pleasant places. Her time is near to come. Her days will not drag on long. And that's the end of chapter 13. And that's getting back to knowing that Babylon is actually coming for for the people. Actually, God is actually um, raising up Babylon against Judah. But we can also look at this as end days prophecy, and actually there's some New Testament verses attached to this, in the footnotes. Matthew chapter 24, verse 29. But immediately after the trouble of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of heaven will be shaken. And this is essentially what Isaiah is saying in chapter 13 as well. I'm sorry, chapter 14 as well. Chapter 13. Boy, I'm getting tired. It's getting late here as I'm reading through this. I'm going to try to get through to chapter 20. And actually, the next verse I'm going to look at that's in the footnote is Revelation. There's a lot of correlation from Isaiah to the New Testament, and a lot of verses that we have looked at were from the book of Revelation, which is very interesting. So, yeah, he is looking at end times as well, and Yeshua's second coming. And I want to make mention here, because this is the beauty of prophecy as well. So for those things that he was prophesying of Yeshua's second coming, or even his first coming. Actually, Isaiah was long gone, so they did not happen during Isaiah's lifetime, but Yeshua's first coming absolutely did come. Um, Now, the rest of the prophecy will be fulfilled as well, um, because this was God's word flowing through Isaiah. So we're looking at chapter 8, verse 12 of Revelation. The fourth angel trumpeted, and a third of the sun, and a third of the moon, and a third of the stars were struck, so that a third of them were darkened, and a third of the day would not shine, as well as a third of the night. So that's actually also saying pretty much what is being said in Isaiah chapter 13. Chapter 14, God's people restored. For Adonai will have compassion on Jacob and will again choose Israel and settle them in their own land. The outsider will join himself with them and will cling to the house of Jacob. The peoples will take them and escort them to their place. The house of Israel will possess them in the land of Adonai as servants and handmaids. They will take their captors captive and rule over their oppressors. Taunt against Babylon's king. Now, in the day when Adonai will give you rest from your sorrow and your turmoil, and from the hard service you were forced to do, you will take up this taunt against the king of Babylon and say, how the taskmaster has ceased. The raging oppressor, exactor of gold, has ceased. Adonai has broken the rod of the wicked, the scepter of the rulers, which struck the people in wrath with continual strokes, which ruled the nations in fury with relentless persecution. The whole earth is at rest and quiet. They break forth with a ringing cry. Even the cypress trees rejoice over you, along with the cedars of Lebanon, since you were laid low. No woodcutter comes up against us. Sheol from below is excited about you to meet you at your coming. He stirs up the dead spirits for you, even the chief ones of the earth. He makes all the kings of the nations rise up from their thrones. They all answer and say to you, even you have become as weak as us. Have you become like us? Your pomp is brought down to Sheol. With the music of your harps, maggots are spread out under you, and worms cover you. Shining ones fallen from heaven. Now, this is very interesting. It is interesting, and here we're going to actually read about the fall. Satan and the fallen angels fall from heaven. Um, those those in hell will actually despise him. Those that have been following him, they're going to actually stare at him and say, "Is this the one who shook the earth? Is this the one who made the kingdoms tremble? It's you that we sold our souls to." They are going to despise him. He's going to be despised, and so we're going to read about that here in this next part of chapter 14. Shining ones fallen from heaven. How have you fallen from heaven, O brightest star, son of the dawn? How you were cut down to the earth, you who made the nations prostrate. You said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit upon the mount of meeting in the uppermost part of the north. I will ascend above the high places of the clouds. I will make myself like Eliam. Yet you will be brought down to Sheol, to the lowest parts of the pit. Those who see you will stare at you, reflecting on what has become of you. Is this the one who shook the earth, who made kingdoms tremble, who made the world a wilderness and destroyed its cities, who never opened the house of his prisoners? All the kings of the nations, all of them lie in glory, each in his own house. But you are cast out of your tomb at a, as a discarded branch. garment of the slain, pierced with a sword, dumped into a stony pit, a corpse trodden underfoot. You will not join with them in burial, because you ruined your land, you slaughtered your own people. The offspring of evildoers will never be named. Prepare slaughter for his children, for the iniquity of their fathers, so they would not rise up and possess the land, or fill the face of the earth with cities. For I will rise up against them. It is a declaration of Adonai Sabaoth, and I will cut off from Babylon name and remnant, offshoot and offspring, declares Adonai. I will also make it a possession for the porcupine with marshes of water, and I will sweep it with the broom of destruction. It is a declaration of Adonai Sabaoth. Adonai Sabaoth has sworn, saying, surely as I thought it, so it will be. As I have purposed, so it will stand. I will break Assyria in my land. On my mountains I will trample him. Then his yoke will be taken off them, his burden removed from their shoulder. This is the purpose, plan for the whole earth, and this is the hand that is stretched out over all the nations, for Adonai Sabaoth has purposed. So who will annul it, since his hand is stretched out? Who will turn it back? And there's a footnote of 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 3 to 4. Let no one deceive you in any way, for the day will not come unless the rebellion comes first, and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the one destined to be destroyed. He opposed he opposes and exalts himself above every so-called God, little g God, or object of worship, so that he sits in the temple of God, proclaiming himself that he is God. So this is reference to Satan. Um, as we're seeing, he fell from heaven, and he will be revealed and working through the Antichrist in the end days. And Luke 10:18 says, and Yeshua said to them, I was watching Satan fall like lightning from heaven. The last part of chapter 14 is the doom of Philistia. In the year King Ahaz died came this burden. Do not rejoice, all of you of Philistia, that the rod that struck you is broken. For from the serpent's root comes a viper, and its fruit will be a flying serpent. The firstborn of the poor will feed, and the needy will lie down in safety. I will kill your root with famine, and your survivors will be slain. Wail, O gate, city, O city. Melt away, all of you, Philistia. For smoke is coming from the north, and there is no straggler in its ranks. What will they answer the messengers of the nation? For Adonai has founded Zion, and the afflicted of his people will find refuge in her. And that's the end of chapter 14, and I'll come back with the next part.